The 2024 college football regular season is complete. For a lot of NFL teams, including my Bengals, the season is pretty much over as well. So all of our attention turns to the draft. And today we are going to be going through a 2-round 2025 NFL mock draft with a couple trades in there as well. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into this so we can get through the full 2 rounds here today. So starting off with the Jacksonville Jaguars, I don't think they would stay at pick number 1 here if they end up in this spot, because they do have their quarterback of the future in Trevor Lawrence. I think there is going to be a team that wants to go up and get their guy. And in this case, I'm going to have the New York Giants trading up here. I have them trading up probably 3 and 35 and then maybe a later pick. It likely won't take as much as it usually does because there's just not as much high-end quarterback play at the top of this draft. But we do have the Giants trading up, jumping the Raiders to get their choice here. And I think it's going to be Cam Ward. He is a little bit erratic. He likes to play outside of structure. He's got a big arm. He's incredibly athletic. He is somebody that I do really like. He's not your stereotypical number 1 overall pick. I think he has more problems than the usual guys that go in that spot. But for the Giants, you move on from Daniel Jones. You got to have somebody added to this roster, whether it's Joe Shane and Brian Daboll making that selection or not. I think Cam Ward is ultimately going to be very much in consideration, and it pretty much has to be a quarterback for the New York Giants. Much like for the Las Vegas Raiders, I think it has to be a quarterback, and there's been a lot of links already with them and Shedeur Sanders, and I think for good reason. I think he is a very accurate quarterback. He's somebody that can operate an offense very effectively. In my most recent top 10 quarterbacks in this draft video, I had him ranked at number 5. And I got a lot of hate for that, and I certainly understand why. Because he's playing at a high level. I just think there are traits and things with him that I don't necessarily think are going to allow him to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And for me, as a talent evaluator, I like shooting for upside at quarterbacks. But I do think Shedeur Sanders will likely be a solid to good starting quarterback. And that's the best thing the Raiders have had in a long time. And so it makes sense. It's not necessarily what I would do with the number 2 overall pick here, but I do think for Shedeur Sanders and for the Las Vegas Raiders, you have to come away with a new signal caller. You can't have Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew back there again. So Sanders makes a ton of sense. Very accurate, very poised, and I think he is somebody that is used to kind of having to elevate some of the players around him, and I think he will be able to do that in some capacity with the Vegas Raiders there. And then at number 3, that leaves the Jaguars. I think this fell perfectly for them, and they can go get Travis Hunter. And I am of the camp that I think Travis Hunter is a better corner than he is wide receiver. I think the most likely scenario for him is that he's going to play wide receiver and maybe occasionally come in on corner, sub packages, things like that. But what I would do if I was, an NFL executive telling Travis Hunter where to play, I'd want him full-time cornerback and have him kind of operate as a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, where he comes in for maybe 20 routes a game. And he's a weapon on offense, but he's really, really instinctive and very dynamic on the defensive side of the ball. Regardless, the Jaguars could use either one of those positions and help on either end. So I am going to go with Travis Hunter to the Jaguars there. At number 4 for the New England Patriots, this is a tough decision because you need help for Drake May. It has to be an offensive player, but do you take offensive line or do you take wide receiver? And I think right now, even though they have needs all across the offensive line, it would be a hard justification of taking a guard 4th overall. And I think there's a decent chance that Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks and some of those guys are better suited at guard. And Tetairoa McMillan is a pretty rare wide receiver prospect. He's not necessarily like one of the most elite wide receiver prospects we've seen in a long time, but he is a very rare build. He's super tall, lanky, he can win on contested catches, he's a very good route runner, and I think that's the kind of player that the Patriots definitely need. They need somebody that can get open consistently for Drake May. No more throwing to Kayshon Boutte and Pop Douglas. I like Pop Douglas, but he shouldn't be one of the top players in your offense. Tetairoa McMillan here going to the New England Patriots at number 4. And I think this ends up being a really good option for the Panthers as well. Bryce Young has played really pretty well over the past couple of weeks. I think they are going to give him another chance next season. It sounds like they're kind of committed to that, and I think they should be at this point based on what he's shown in the second half of the season. They really need help on the defense, though, and Abdul Carter has kind of become a really interesting edge prospect. Was an off-ball linebacker last year, first year as an edge rusher. He started off a little bit slow, but man, he has really turned it on. He has a 21.2 pass rush win rate. His athleticism is off the charts. He's not necessarily the longest, lankiest guy, 6'3", 252 pounds, but I think he is a special athlete and somebody that the Panthers would be very happy to take at number 5 here. And then for the Jets at number 6, sounds like Aaron Rodgers does not have any more interest in being the quarterback of this team next year. And you're going to be bringing in a new coaching staff, a new GM, probably just like ripping the team down from the top down. And I do think that a quarterback is absolutely in play. And I am actually going to go that route and take Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. And once again, not your prototypical top 10 pick at quarterback. Milroe has a ton of flaws when it comes to his accuracy, his ability to read progressions and go through them, be able to read a defense, know where to go and stuff, is not where you would want for a top 10 pick at quarterback. But he is a special athlete, like one of the best athletes we have seen coming out. His size, his speed, his athleticism is special. And his arm talent is really, really good as well. He's got a cannon of an arm. So the raw traits are so enticing. Maybe that he does end up sitting behind Tyrod Taylor, some of the other bridge quarterbacks around the league. I think he needs time, but I think the Jets could end up being a good situation for him down the road. And I do think you have to take him here. I don't think you're going to be able to wait until the second round. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a massive run of quarterbacks, but the guys are going to go. And Milroe at pick number 6 here to the New York Jets could be a very interesting fit. At number 7 for the Titans, definitely went back and forth on Will Campbell, Luther Burden, one of these other guys in here as well. But I ended up deciding that I want to trade back. Mason Graham is still on the board here. And there is a team in the Dallas Cowboys that is so bad against the run. And so we are going to have them give up 13 and 77 to come up 6 picks here. And it might take a little bit more than that, but not too worried about, the specifics of the trade. But we have the Cowboys coming up. I know they're linked with Ashton Jeanty. I've done that like a million times before. I don't think they'd be trading up to get Ashton Jeanty, but I'm going to have them select Mason Graham here. He is a really impressive defensive tackle. You can play him anywhere from the nose to like a 5-tech. He is incredibly athletic. He can win with pass rush moves. He's a very good run defender. I think he is a fantastic player, one of the best players in this class. And for the Cowboys, getting above the Saints and the Bengals and the Bears, teams that do need that guy, I think makes a lot of sense. And so I do have the Cowboys moving up to get their guy. And then at pick number 8 for the Cleveland Browns, the offensive line is quickly really falling apart. It used to be a major strength of this team, but things have really fallen apart. You've had a lot of injuries to Bitonio and Teller on the interior, and then Jedrick Wills is just not the same player. I'm going to take Will Campbell here. I think that he can either play left tackle and replace Jedrick Wills for you, or fill in one of the guard spots and be really, really good there. So I think for this Browns team, he is a big position of need. I think he's a good player. You don't necessarily know where he's going to end up, but you can use him regardless. So I am going to go ahead and have Will Campbell go to the Cleveland Browns at number 8. You could argue quarterback, but with 3 already off the board, I just don't think the Browns are going to go in that direction, though I think they would definitely like to because Watson is just terrible. At pick number 9, though, for the Saints, this is another interesting one. They could go in many directions. You could take Ashton Jeanty if you wanted to replace Alvin Kamara. You could take a corner and Will Johnson. I am going to go with an edge rusher, and you could take Nick Scorton, but I think that kind of more their guy is Mykel Williams. He's a freaky athlete. You look at his measurables, he's 6'5", 265 pounds. He's got really long arms. He's really athletic, and that's the draw with him. You are looking to hope that he can develop more of a pass rush arsenal and a pass rush move kind of set, because it's not quite there yet. The flashes are there, but this is the type of edge rusher that the Saints like. He's freaky athletic. He is somebody that is really good against the run right now, and he's kind of in that Trayvon Walker type of mold, which is not the biggest compliment in the world, but getting him at pick number 9, the Saints have a type. Maybe that changes with Dennis Allen and kind of that coaching regime gone, but I think Mykel Williams makes a ton of sense for the Saints at number 9 here. And then for the Bengals, really just pick your defender of choice. I definitely considered Malachi Starks because this secondary, and specifically the safety position, has been a disaster this year. But Will Johnson is still on the board, staring them in the face. They actually already have two other Michigan corners. Dax Hill, converted from safety to outside corner, actually looked pretty decent before he ended up getting injured. DJ Turner, another guy that was starting to come on towards the middle of the season, and then he got injured. Will Johnson, I think, would be huge for this team. Getting those three Michigan corners in there would be big for this defense that has just been gashed over and over and over again. Your big hope for the Bengals this year is just fix the defense because the offense looks really good. I think Will Johnson would be a huge start in potentially being able to solidify that defensive end for the Bengals. At pick number 11 for the Chicago Bears, went with Kelvin Banks. It's got to be basically just the best offensive lineman for them because Caleb Williams has been on his butt a lot. And that's a situation where he holds onto the ball a lot, but the offensive line has been really bad as well. The guards in particular, as well as the center, have been atrocious. And so I think you have got to be ready to kind of fill that position. Tevin Jenkins is good when he plays, but he's a free agent. He's always injured. I'm not sure he'll be back. So I could definitely see Banks sliding into left guard, maybe left tackle if you really want to move on from Braxton Jones as well. But I think Banks makes a ton of sense. The best offensive lineman on the board for a team that desperately needs offensive line. Next up for the Dolphins, going to go with a guy that I definitely think is a pure tackle. He's one of the few guys that you know are going to play tackle. That's Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota. You look at his pass blocking grade, he's really, really good in that regard. He's particularly good in zone, and that makes a lot of sense in Mike McDaniel's scheme, assuming he will still be there. At 6'6", 330 pounds, Tron Armstead has struggled to stay healthy. I think you need help on that right tackle spot. Austin Jackson, I don't think is that good. Regardless, though, you can move these guys onto the interior, find your best five. You just truly need to get a better offensive line out there. I definitely think there's a world in which quarterback is considered, likely not in the first round, but if Tua continues to have those concussions, that conversation will get louder, but just wanted to shout that out. I think right now, though, offensive line has to be the priority. Ursary is where we're going to go here. And then for the Tennessee Titans, you trade back. You ended up having the offensive lineman go, which I think you probably could have expected with this trade back. And I'm going to make a move that I'm not sure how Titans fans will feel about it. I'm going to have them select Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State. One of the best pure running backs I have seen, I've ever scouted before. His contact balance is just absurd. And for me personally, he is the Heisman Trophy winner. He is just putting up a historic season. And I know for the Titans, you have Tony Pollard, you have Tyjae Spears. Those guys are good, but they're not something that will prevent you from taking a really good, almost generational running back prospect. And Jeanty is that, in my opinion. Get behind that offensive line, be able to run the football, and I think that's kind of what the Titans want their identity to be. I do think you still need to add to the offensive line. It's a weak area. Wide receivers are not great. But if you don't trust Will Levis, and you don't really have the ammunition to move on from him, you could take a Garrett Nussmeier or, Carson Beck here if you wanted to, but I just don't see them going in that direction. The best way to kind of win with Will Levis is to take the ball out of his hands and let Ashton Jeanty be the workhorse of that offense. So, Titans fans, let me know what you think about Jeanty to you guys at pick 13 after trading back. For the 49ers at 14, going to go with Josh Simmons. Thought he was playing incredibly well. Could have climbed up to the very top of the board, and been tackle one, in my opinion. His pass blocking was incredibly good before he got hurt against Oregon. He is somebody that, might not be able to do everything in the pre-draft process, so he might not be able to climb the boards like a lot of people hope he would, including myself. But I think Simmons is somebody that can be a guard or a tackle, but ultimately, he is going to be the long-term answer you hope for replacing Trent Williams at left tackle. I definitely think he could be a really quality player for them at pick number 14. At number 15, going to go with a guy a little bit lower down the board, and that's Tyler Warren out of Penn State. I think they want to add to the tight end room, and Warren and Colston Loveland are the two best tight ends in this class. But Warren provides a little bit of just kind of playmaker aspects that I really like. Look at his 71.4 contested catch percentage. He is so good. They run the ball with him. They have him throw the ball. He's all over the place, and he is such a fun player to watch. You look at kind of his stats as well. He has 81 receptions, 978 yards, 6 touchdowns. He is just incredibly productive. He's very fun to watch, and I think he is somebody that could be a huge get for this Colts offense, and he is the better run blocker of the two as well, which I think will be the draw to Tyler Warren over Colston Loveland at pick number 15 there. At number 16 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going to go with Nick Scorton. He is a very productive guy on the edge for Texas A&M. He's very polished. He's got a little bit more of a stiff profile, but he wins with power. I'd like to see him kind of get back to a little bit more of that flexibility and kind of speed off the ball that I thought he showed at Purdue. But at 6'4", 285 pounds, his MO is winning with power, and he does that effectively, wins with smarts and IQ. He's a very productive pass rusher, somebody that I think would be a good get for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at pick number 16 there. For the Rams at number 17, it will be interesting to see kind of what happens with Benjamin Morrison because he's coming back off a major injury. There's a chance he could go back to school, but I think he is a really good player when he plays. 6 foot, 190 pounds. His movement ability is off the charts, and I think he is somebody that is definitely going to be in the first round conversation, even with that injury, which is why I think he'll likely declare. But for the Rams, they need help in that corner position. There's just not a lot that they have in that room, and getting a guy that could potentially be an alpha 1 for you is huge for this defense that I think they are really looking to retool and rebuild there. At pick number 18 for the Arizona Cardinals, this is entirely dependent on if Budda Baker leaves. He is an upcoming free agent, so definitely a consideration. But I'm going to go with Malachi Starks. I think he is another guy that could turn into maybe the next great safety in the NFL. He's got good movement ability, very good instincts. He's a good coverage player, willing to come up and be physical and hit. He is one of those guys that, safety is a position that, much like running back, you're not likely taking in the first round unless they're a special player. I do think Malachi Starks is a very good player, and kind of finding the right fit for him is difficult in this draft because not a lot of teams can afford to take a first round safety, but Starks is a really quality player, and I think if the Cardinals do lose Budda Baker, it would make a ton of sense kind of to try to replace him with Malachi Starks at pick number 18 there. For the Falcons up next, going to go with Shedeur Sanders out of Texas A&M. He was an incredibly high recruit, somebody that doesn't necessarily look like your natural edge rusher at 6'6", 290 pounds. He is a very big physical edge rusher, but he looks really athletic on the field as well. He's somebody that maybe hasn't put everything together quite like you would hope quite yet, but he is somebody with freakish traits. For this Falcons team, they've struggled to get a pass rush for a long time. He's a good run defender, a really, really good run defender. I think that would be huge for them, bringing physicality to their front seven and being able to hope that he can really kind of put together things like I think he started to show down the course of the season here and really allow him to become a really big force on that Falcons defensive line. Going to go with Shedeur Sanders at pick number 19 there. And then for the Broncos at 20, I've made this pick before. I think it just makes so much sense, and it's a perfect fit. It's Luther Burden out of Missouri. He's had a bit of a disappointing year. Don't think his quarterback has been very good this year. But for Burden, he's somebody that is incredibly good after the catch. He's kind of that power slot type of player, and somebody that you can get a lot of design touches to and let him be in space and really make plays for you. I think you already have Cortland Sutton. You've got Troy Franklin, a couple other guys in that Broncos wide receiver room, but you really need somebody that you can get the ball to out in space and let him make plays. I think Bo Nix would thrive with that on his team, and that's exactly what Burden is and what he would be for them as well. So I just love that fit. And then for the Seahawks at number 21, he's ranked a little bit lower on PFF's board here, but Tyler Booker out of Alabama, I think, is the best pure guard in the class right now. For the Seahawks team, you've just simply got to improve the offensive line. It hasn't been good enough. Anthony Bradford, your other guards on this team, they just have not been good enough. And I would understand taking Cam Williams or a tackle as well, because this is just, you've dealt with injuries to Abraham Lucas and Charles Cross. Both of these guys have struggled to stay healthy a little bit. The interior of the offensive line is rough. So I'm going to go with Tyler Booker here to hope to bring a little bit of stability to that offensive line. Then for the Commanders at number 22, you could go in a lot of directions. And it feels bad to not help Jaden Daniels here. But somebody that is still on the board that I think is just too good to pass up is James Pierce Jr. Maybe hasn't turned into the number one pick worthy player that most people kind of had him mocked as coming into the season, but he's been really good and After the first, month of the season, he's really kind of started to put good performances together. 23% pass rush win rate. He is a really bendy, speedy, athletic pass rusher. And I do think he does show some physicality from time to time as well in the running game and in passing game. Bull rushes, things like that. I think they do exist. And for James Pierce Jr., somebody that I could definitely see continue to kind of creep back up the board a little bit. 6'5", 243 pounds, a little bit on the slender side, but he is somebody that can really get after the passer. They do need some help on that edge room. After losing Montez Sweat and Chase Young, you need to kind of retool that room. And getting James Pierce Jr. at number 22 just is a perfect fit, in my opinion. Then at number 23 for the Texans, you need to address offensive line, but I don't love a lot of the guards here at this point, so we're going to go on the other side of the ball, actually, and take Kenneth Grant out of Michigan, a freaky athletic nose tackle. He can get after the passer, which is really rare. He is a little bit of a splashy play type of guy where he will make great plays and then he'll kind of disappear a little bit, but if you can harness some of those great plays, he is really, really good against the run. He is very dynamic. His athleticism shows up constantly in the pass rush, and I think he is somebody that can most definitely continue to get better. At 6'3", 339 pounds, you just don't see many guys move like he does at that size, and he is a special player. At number 23, I think getting him in the middle of that D'Amico Ryans defense would be huge. Then at 24 for the Ravens, I think you got to go offensive line. You just took Roger Rosengarten, but I'm going to go with Wyatt Millum here. When you look at his stats, 89.8 pass blocking grade, 92.1 in true pass blocking. He has slowed down a little bit, but he has put up some great tape this year. Maybe somebody that does end up sliding into guard. He's 6'6", 317, but doesn't have the longest arm, so he may end up kicking inside to guard, which is honestly what I think the Ravens need the most right now as well. But Ronnie Stanley not getting any younger as well, continuing to add to that offensive line, protects Lamar Jackson, block for Derrick Henry. That's where I think the Ravens do invest this season. Then at number 25 for the Chargers, I've almost always mocked a defensive tackle, edge rusher, something in the trenches to them. But Colston Loveland is here, and I think he is somebody that Harbaugh does really like. He's not quite as big of a blocker as I think they would love to see, but you go back to his tape, he is a really good receiver. He's a smooth mover. He runs really advanced routes. He's probably their most dangerous offensive weapon, and I think he is somebody that definitely could turn into a really nice tight end. For this Chargers team, I think they don't have much of a weapon at all. It's Will Dissly and other guys in that tight end room that are fine, but getting a playmaker and a difference maker like Colston Loveland would be huge for this team. So that's where we're going to go for the Chargers at number 25. The Steelers at 26, I've made this pick before as well, but it makes sense. Emeka Egbuka. They need wide receiver help. George Pickens, when he's not being a head case, is really good at contested catches and being a downfield playmaker. Egbuka is somebody that can win over the middle of the field in kind of those short areas, option routes, slants, in routes, things over the middle of the field. I think that is where he can really win effectively. I think he's best in the slot, but he doesn't have to be in the slot. And I think that works just fine for the Steelers. You've got your big physical outside receiver in Pickens. Egbuka could be a very nice complement to that. And then at number 27 for the Packers, he's not at all their traditional type of edge rusher. He may end up playing kind of a physical off-ball linebacker that comes up and is more of that Sam role. And I'm going to go with Jalen Walker. I think he's better as an edge rusher because his freaky athleticism really gets to show up. I think, he's played off-ball. He's played more off-ball than he has on the ball and as an edge rusher, but he's a freaky defensive athlete, and I think he's somebody that the Packers would definitely be interested in. Even if he doesn't fit the kind of measurables that the Packers often look for, they might be able to make an exception for him because he's such a crazy good athlete, and that's often what they do look at. For the Vikings at pick number 28, moving right ahead here, I think corner is definitely on the board, as well as running back. Omarion Hampton, someone I really like, but I'm going to go with Siobhan Ravel. He is somebody that, when you look at his tape, it's really impressive. You look at a guy from Eastern Carolina, it's going to have to be a really special player to be in the first-round conversation, especially for a guy that tore his ACL 3 games into the season. And I definitely think he's still going to be in the conversation for a first-round pick. His coverage grade is really impressive. When you watch his tape, he's very physical, he's long, he's athletic. You look at him, 6'3", 193 pounds. He's definitely kind of a big prototypical Brian Flores type of corner, and I think it makes a ton of sense for Siobhan Ravel to go to the Vikings here. At number 29 for the Eagles, thought about this one a little bit, and someone I really like for them is Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. He is kind of the Milton Williams replacement, who is an upcoming free agent. He is a really good run defender. He's very big, he's physical, but his pass rushing, his athleticism is really what gets you excited as well. Transfer from Texas A&M, has looked really good at Ole Miss this year as well. I think he's definitely somebody that is starting to kind of get some buzz for the first round. He's somebody that at 6'3", 305 pounds, he can slot next to Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, those guys with big physical defensive tackles. Nolan can play kind of as a 5-tech, as a 3-tech, and I definitely think he can be a big physical presence. At just 21 years old, he's a very exciting young player for this Eagles team to add to the trenches, which is what we know they love to do in the early rounds of the draft. For the Bills at number 30, I think he's a fantastic player. So not a position you see in the first round all the time, but Jahad Campbell, he's a true off-ball linebacker. But for the Bills, Matt Milano has been banged up quite a bit this year. He's finally come back, but he is a little bit older as well. And I think you need a guy that can be one of those guys, runs around, makes plays, very athletic, very physical. Jahad Campbell is all of that, and adding him kind of to the center of that defense, he's a good enough linebacker that I think you can absolutely justify taking him at the back end of round one. A couple other analysts have him as like the 15th overall player, and he's just dropping a little bit because of positional value, and I think that's a lot closer to what I see him as well. He's a very big, fun, physical linebacker that can run around and hit. I really like him in the early parts of this draft. 6'3", 244 pounds, nice size for a linebacker there. Then at 31 for the Chiefs, I went a couple different directions here, but ultimately settled on Cam Williams. He's young, he's definitely athletic, and he has a lot of the traits you look for. He is raw, and he's somebody that the Chiefs will need to develop, but Wanya Morris and Kingsley Suamataia, Jawan Taylor, these guys have just not been good enough for protecting Patrick Mahomes. Defenses are winning consistently around the edge, and I think you just continue to need to add to that position until you find a hit. Williams is definitely somebody that is raw, but that's the reason he's available. I think he has a ton of talent. You just kind of have to put things together for him. He's the other Texas tackle. Early on in the process, some people liked him more than Banks. I think that's kind of cooled off a little bit, but I think for the Chiefs, it makes a ton of sense to take him at 31. And then another sleeper for the Lions at pick number 32 here. I'm going to go with Mike Green out of Marshall. And you might think that is a crazy overdraft to take somebody out of Marshall with this pick, but look at his stats. He has 16 sacks this year, a 91.3 PFF grade. He's just insanely productive. And yes, he's going against, Appalachian State and Georgia Southern, but he also did it against Ohio State and Virginia Tech. These real teams that he's going up against and real NFL prospects, he is also continuing to produce as well. He is very fun, very athletic, 6'4", 248 pounds. I think he competes well in the running game, but he would be a true pass rush specialist to pair with Aiden Hutchinson. I really, really like Mike Green out of Marshall there at number 32. The Jaguars at pick number 33. I think you got to add to the offensive line. And I'm going to go with Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. 91.8 PFF grade. He is not going up against the best competition, but look at this Colorado game. He played incredibly well. He's invited to the Senior Bowl, so I'm excited to see how he competes against guys there as well. 6'6", 305 pounds. Might be somebody that ends up being a guard, but I think you can play him at tackle. You have Anton Harrison, you just paid Walker Little, but I'm not convinced on really either of those guys. And Zabel, I think, just provides a nice piece kind of all across the roster for you for the Jaguars at pick 33. For the Raiders, you already drafted Shedeur Sanders. Why don't you go get him a weapon in Isaiah Bond? Incredibly fast. Ewers really has not been able to unlock him, but I think Sanders, with his accuracy, his ability to anticipate routes when they come open, I think he could get a little bit more out of Isaiah Bond at this point. And he's somebody that, maybe hasn't produced the way you would like, but at 180 pounds, the dude can fly, and he's definitely an exciting piece to take a swing on in day two there. And then for the Jaguars, this is originally the Giants pick. Giants gave it up to go up and get Cam Ward. Getting that extra, top 35 pick is huge for this Jaguars roster, which is very, very depleted. I'm going to go with Tyleik Williams, one of my personal favorites out of Ohio State. He's such a good run defender. He's a true nose tackle. He's somebody that can eat up blocks, take up double teams. He is athletic enough that he can at least give you a little bit of juice in the pass game, but he's a true run stuffer, and he's so good in that role. I think for this Jaguars team, they definitely need to add to that front seven, especially on the interior as well. For the Patriots up now, I think you have to take offensive line, and it kind of sucks that you've forced yourself into that, but I think you just simply have to, and I am going to go with Marcus Mabau out of Purdue. He's somebody that a lot of people are super high on. He hasn't had the most ridiculous, crazy stats, and I think he has struggled in certain performances, but he's a very exciting, very young, talented, raw player that I think you can continue to develop and really grow. He was on a terrible, terrible team in Purdue this year and still stood out as a very good player. So I think he's somebody that the Patriots would have to develop. He can play pretty much really. Right now he plays tackle, but I think he's maybe going to be best at center, but you could play him at guard. I think he does have maybe true 5 position versatility. At the very least, he can be kind of a guy that is a chess piece for you to move around and turn into a really quality player wherever he ends up being the best there. Now at pick 37, the Chicago Bears. This was originally the Panthers pick for the Bryce Young trade. I'm going to go with TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. This team has been searching for a defensive tackle. I think you may have found one with Gravon Dexter a little bit, but you need a running mate. Andrew Billings has been decent this year, but TJ Sanders, I think, brings a little bit of different juice and different energy to that room, and I think he would be a nice find for the Bears at 37 there. The Jets at 38. Going to go with Jahdae Barron. He was originally a safety, kind of played in the nickel. Now he's a true outside corner, and he is somebody that really has taken advantage of that opportunity. Has had 4 interceptions this year, really good in zone coverage. I think his instincts that he got from playing safety and kind of all around the back end of that defense is incredibly invaluable for the Jets. You're most likely going to be losing DJ Reed this offseason, so being able to pair Barron and Sauce Gardner, I think, is a really nice combination there. Then for the Titans at number 39, I think you do want to look at the offensive line. We had them trading back and taking Ashton Genty in round 1. I am going to go with Jonah Savaiinaea out of Arizona. I think he's definitely going to be a guard, but I think that's A-okay. They need help on the interior as well. I think maybe, you just got to figure out your best lineup. Latham and Skoronski are good players. Dylan Radunes, maybe you end up kicking him back out to tackle. Who knows? But I think you've got to continue to add to that offensive line room. The tackles right now are just terrible. So, Charles Grant is a big, big swing to be taking at 39. Chase Lunt, Emory Jones, Josh Connerly. These are just not guys I project to be in the conversation for this pick, and so I think you take the best offensive lineman, a guard here in this case, and you're happy with taking Jonah Savaiinaea at number 39 there. And then for the Browns at number 40, thought about this one quite a bit as well, and I ended up settling on Quinshon Judkins out of Ohio State. He is, I think the more dynamic, more athletic running back out of Ohio State. With Nick Chubb kind of coming off another major injury, I really hope he does get back to form, but I don't think you can rely on it. I think for the Browns, you want this team to really get back to being a pound the rock type of team, especially with Deshaun Watson. If he is going to be your quarterback next year, you draft an offensive lineman in Will Campbell, you draft Quinshon Judkins, and you really allow this team to get back to its root of being a run the football, play good defense type of team. Judkins, I think, is a major upgrade over Jerome Ford, and I think he does provide a little bit of some extra juice and physicality that maybe Nick Chubb can't provide on a every down basis. It allows you to maybe keep both of them and allow Chubb to hopefully continue to be an explosive player and a physical runner. He just doesn't have to do it every single play, and I think Judkins is well worth the selection here at number 40. And then for the Saints at 41, I also thought about this one as well. We ended up going with another running back, Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. He's my personal running back 2 because of how physical he is. I love his ability to, make guys miss in the open field. He is super elusive. I think he is uncharacteristically fast for how big and physical he is. He's very tough to bring down. He reads defenses really effectively. 220 pounds, he's big, athletic, physical. That's the exact type of player that you want to try to replace Alvin Kamara as he continues to get older and expensive as well. I think, you have drafted a couple other running backs, but Hampton is a clear upgrade, in my opinion, over what the other guys would be. At number 42 for the Cincinnati Bengals, also a lot of different ways you could go. We already had them taking a corner. I think you got to continue to add to the defense. I'm going to go with Jack Sawyer. He is a little bit of what you think of when you think of Sam Hubbard. He's really good against the run. He doesn't necessarily have the most clear pass rush plan, but he does win with power. He is a good looper. He is super effective on stunts and blitzes. He can drop into coverage from time to time at an interception against Michigan. He is just somebody that knows how to win. I think he is a very tough player and somebody that the Bengals do need. They just need to get more physical on the front seven, and Sawyer would definitely bring that to this Bengals edge room. For the Bears, I also think they could add to the edge room as well. You have Montez Sweat. I don't love the other guys on their team, and so I'm going to go with LT Overton. I think there's a decent chance he returns to school, but 17.4 pass rush win percentage. He's not somebody that's the super bendiest guy, but he's physical. He's smart against the run. You look at his size at 6'5", 283 pounds. The Bears tend to like bigger physical edge rushers, and that's exactly what Overton is. I think this is more where I'm comfortable with him. PFF previously had him as the 20th best player in the draft. For me personally, I think more second round is appropriate for him, but I think Overton to the Bears would be a nice selection as they continue to beef up their front seven with TJ Sanders and Overton there. For the Dolphins up next, another guy that I think is going to rise up boards a little bit. We have Azariah Thomas out of Florida State. Obviously, Florida State's been horrible this year, but he's somebody that has some really nice traits. I think he's physical, 6'2", 198 pounds, just a junior. He's somebody that has played against good competition in the ACC. He's just kind of slowly continued to climb the board, and I do think he will end up being a second-round pick and a big area of need for the Dolphins. You have Jalen Ramsey, you've got some other guys in there, but Thomas would be a nice little addition to that room as they continue to try to get some really good coverage players on that back end of the defense. And then for the Cowboys at 45 here, we passed over Ashton Genty, traded up, and got Mason Graham. Going to draft Caleb Johnson now. And, he's somebody that is very big, physical, powerful. He's incredibly productive. 1,500 yards and 21 touchdowns so far this year. He is definitely putting on a clinic against Big Ten defenses. So he's somebody that in the middle of round 2, 225 pounds, 6 foot, he is a bruising back and definitely somebody that the Cowboys would really like to add in the second round. For the 49ers, we had them drafting Josh Simmons in the first round. Going to go with Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. He's a long, physical cornerback, 6'1", 190 pounds. We see a lot of those types of guys in this draft, and that's, I think, where the league is going. You need guys that can be physical at the line of scrimmage. He's a good man coverage player. He's somebody that, has gone against really good competition in the SEC, and somebody that, I do think will be a good player in the league. Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. Big need for the 49ers as well. You don't have a ton of guys that you feel super confident about on the back end. So going to add Amos there. For 47 for the Indianapolis Colts, one guy I really, really like is Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame. He had a huge interception return for a touchdown against USC, but he is just super instinctual, very physical. He'll come up and, tackle you at the line of scrimmage, but really where he wins is coverage. And he is very athletic, physical. He has great instincts. I think, Blackman and, the guys they have on the back end of that defense are fine, but Watts would be a clear upgrade to me and a good pick at number 47 there. For the Buccaneers up next, I'm going to go with a really, really fun player, and that is Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green. Look at his grades, 95.7 PFF grades. His receiving profile is absurd. And yes, it's against MAC competition, but he did it against Penn State. He's done it against some pretty good teams as well. Texas A&M, he played really well. He has 100 catches 1,300 yards and 9 touchdowns. And he's not a blocker. He's just doesn't have the size for it. That's why he's not a first-round tight end. But at 6'4", 230 pounds, a really interesting move tight end option. His ability to, he would basically be kind of that wing move tight end, a slot option. But I think you could really use that type of player. And Fannin would be a really fun addition for Liam Cohen and this offensive staff to move around and find creative ways to get him the ball. And, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, if they all are back, Harold Fannin would be a nice addition to that room as well. The Carolina Panthers up next at pick number 49. And, I am going to go with another defensive lineman. We had them taking Abdul Carter in the first round. I really like Omar Norman Lott as a pass rushing, penetrating 3-tech, 17.2 pass rush win rate. He's been really good at getting after the quarterback. He has 5 sacks, 9 QB hits. He is just a very disruptive type of player. You've got Derek Brown. He's a great run-stuffing defensive nose tackle. You add Abdul Carter and Omar Norman Lott. All of a sudden, this front seven and this defensive line looks way, way better. And I think that's kind of going to be a huge thing. You added a ton of offense and dedicated a lot of resources to the offense. I still think you could add a wide receiver, no doubt about it. There's other positions that I think the Panthers would like to add on offense, but Omar Norman Lott would be a really nice, fun addition as well in the second round here. For the Cardinals, we had them taking Malachi Starks in the first round to help replace Budda Baker if they lose him. Next, we're going to go to Landon Jackson out of Arkansas. He's somebody that is a big physical player, 6'7", 280 pounds. He is a very fun 7-sack guy in the SEC. He is a good run defender. I think he just brings physicality that, obviously Jonathan Gannon looks for in his front seven. He looks a little bit like Darius Robinson when it comes to kind of how he plays, but I think he's more of a true edge rusher, even though he is 280 pounds. He brings physicality, somebody that can get after the quarterback, which is still an area of need for this Cardinals team. And then the Falcons, we took Shedeur Sanders earlier. I'm going to go and double up on defensive line. They have some guys at edge rush position. You've got Matt Judon or Olebekete, but neither one of them are long-term answers. I'm going to add Shedeur Sanders, who's a big physical 290-pound guy. And then you kind of get the opposite. Princely Umanmielen, who is really productive. 11 sacks at Ole Miss in the SEC. He's 255 pounds, but he's kind of more of that speed rush guy. When he wins super quickly and super effectively. This has been an area of need for the Falcons for, it feels like, years and years and years. And we're going to continue to address it with Princely there at pick number 51. For the Broncos up next, I went back and forth on who they would take here, but I ended up settling on defensive line. I like some of the guys they have there, but Deion Walker is a true freak. When you look at his size, he is 6'6", 345 pounds in the middle of that defense. He was projected as a top 20 pick. He hasn't really lived up to that. I think his run defense is a big reason why. He's not kind of as good as you would like to see on that run defense. But he's not playing with great guys next to him as well. His pass rush win rate is pretty good. And he's somebody that can get after the quarterback. 4 sacks so far this year. It is a noticeable downturn from 8 last year, but I do think he is a very intriguing player that, in the middle to late second round, I definitely think that's where he really starts to become very appealing for the Broncos and the other teams around here. Next up, we have the Seahawks, and I don't know how this will go over with Seahawks fans, but I really, really like how Geno Smith has played for them. But you also have to be real that he is, in his late 30s. And I think it would be smart to take a guy to develop to be your potential future quarterback. I'm going to go with Drew Aller. Personally, I like Garrett Nussmeier more, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if Nussmeier ends up going back to school. Aller could as well, but he has lots of good physical traits, and it's somebody that coming down the stretch, he's going to be in the playoffs. I think over the middle of the field, he's really good. He's kind of reminds me a lot of Ben Roethlisberger. He's tough to bring down. He's very physically gifted, great arm. He can run when he needs to, but he's good at extending plays and being able to, throw the ball downfield. I don't think Penn State asks too much of him, but I think in the second round, he's 6'5", 235 pounds. He's super young. I definitely think it would make sense for the Seahawks to take a swing there. At number 54 for the Washington Commanders, we went edge rush last time with getting James Pierce. I feel like you have to add to the offensive line, and Chase Lunt is an interesting one to keep an eye on, but I'm going to go with another small school guy in Charles Grant. He is going to be at the Senior Bowl as well, so I'm very excited to see how he performs against better competition than he faced at William and Mary, but he's a very, very physically gifted player at 6'4", 300 pounds. I think he's somebody that, based on how he performs at the Senior Bowl, could go on day 2. Excited to see what he can do there. At 55 for the Texans, going to go with an interesting one here. He's listed as an offensive tackle. He was way higher rated earlier in the year. Emory Jones out of LSU. He definitely hasn't had a great year this year, but I think he is a guard. And right now he's playing right tackle for LSU. But at 6'6", 315 pounds, he just does not have the feet to play tackle. And I think he will end up being a guard. But for the Texans, they need a guard. And I think, replacing Kenyon Green, who has just simply not been a good player for you, getting Emory Jones really for either guard spot, I think would be a huge get for them and would be a big upgrade to that room. The Ravens up next, going to go with the other Ohio State edge rusher, JT Tuimoloau, was the number 1 overall recruit. And hasn't lived up to that. His pass rush game has just not been able to really fully be developed. He does have 9 sacks this year, but it just doesn't feel like he's really consistently winning. A lot of those are high-effort sacks. He's a good, physically gifted player. You look at his build, it's exactly what you want to see. 6'5", 270 pounds. He's big, he's physical, he's athletic. He just really hasn't quite put it together for some reason, but those are the kinds of players that the Ravens, I feel like, love. Raw, undeveloped guys that the Ravens can really churn out and turn into productive pieces. I think that would make a ton of sense for them. The Chargers at number 57. We passed over defensive tackle last time to go get Colston Loveland. We're going to go get one now in Derek Harmon. He transferred over from Michigan State and has been awesome. 18.1 pass rush win rate. He's been really effective against the run as well. Last year, he was kind of more effective against the run. He was big and beefy, lost a little bit of weight. He got more productive against the pass, maybe a little bit less effective against the run, but he's been a big, big player for Oregon and definitely somebody I could see going on day 2 here. The Steelers at number 58, we've done this for a couple teams where we've doubled up on positions of need. We had them taking Emeka Egbuka. Alec Ayomanor is a really interesting player out of Stanford. He's kind of more of that contested catch, big, physical, nasty type of player, and that's the kind of player the Steelers really do love. And they don't throw the ball a ton, and I could definitely see the argument against drafting 2 wide receivers. You drafted Roman Wilson last year, but I think this is a very interesting value. I mean, PFF had him rated as like the 28th best player. I don't think he's quite that good personally, but for the Steelers at pick 58, I think you might be getting a pretty decent value. You're getting another weapon for Russ in this offense and being able to surround him with as many pieces as possible. And let's be real, I mean, the Steelers don't have a ton of gigantic needs. You could add to the offensive line, but I think that's pretty well picked over at this point. And so I'm going to go with Alec Ayomanor out pick number 58 for the Steelers. Then at 59 for the Packers, going to go with a corner here, Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. He is a guy at 6'1", 186 pounds. You want him to put on a little bit of weight, but he's very physical. He's fun to watch. I think that, he didn't have the best year, but he is a very, very fun player. Had 5 interceptions last year. He's instinctual, has good ball skills. So somebody that I think could be an intriguing target towards the end of round 2. For the Bills at number 60, I'm going to go with Donovan Ezeruwaku out of Boston College. He has 14 sacks this year. He has been awesome, has a wide range of pass rush moves, somebody that I think I'm going to be a little bit higher on. At 247 pounds, he doesn't have the most ideal length, and he's going to lose some against the run, but I think he does a really good job against the run as well. Setting in the edge, cutting inside, somebody I do really like, and I think for this Bills team, continuing to add to that room, as Von Miller ages, and some of the other guys in that room, Rousseau and Epinesa, we'll see what happens with them. I'm sure Rousseau will be around for a while, but I think Ezeruwaku could be a nice addition to that room there. Then the Eagles, I think, they always add to the trenches. And offensive tackle is a position of need. When Jordan Mailata was hurt earlier and you had Fred Johnson starting, that was far from ideal. Lane Johnson is injury prone and really old at this point. So I'm going to go with Josh Connerly out of Oregon. He's somebody that is pretty effective kind of all around. He is their predominant left tackle and somebody that I could definitely see the Eagles taking interest in at 6'4", 315 pounds, a true junior, somebody I really do like for the Eagles there. Then the Buffalo Bills up next again. I'm going to go with a safety, and that is Nick Eamon-Wari out of South Carolina. He's a safety, but he's a big physical guy. He's somebody that can come in the box, kind of fit in as a pseudo linebacker at 6'3", 227 pounds. He has really good ball skills, though, and I think he can be a kind of versatile weapon. They were so good for so long with, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. Continuing to add to kind of the safety room in the back end of that defense with Eamon-Wari would be a really good addition there. At number 63, going to go with Trevion Henderson out of Ohio State for the Chiefs. Henderson is kind of that really good third down back. He's probably the best pass protecting back in the class, in my opinion. Hasn't been able to regain his true freshman form where he had 15 touchdowns and was just absolutely absurd. Had a couple major injuries in 2022. Last year looked good. And then this year, he's kind of in a timeshare backfield with Quinshon Judkins, but has been super efficient, 6.8 yards per carry. I think he's really good in the passing game, so I think it would make sense to add him to the Chiefs here. And then the last pick for the Detroit Lions, going to get one more trade in here. And I don't know how this will go over either, but I'm going to have the Browns giving up 72, 109, at 464 here, and I am going to have the Browns draft a quarterback. And at this point, I think it is going to be somebody that is a backup to start for Deshaun Watson, but can come in and maybe hope to be the future of the franchise. Again, I personally like Nussmeier, but I think the league might be higher on Quinn Ewers. He has a really good arm. He has not had the season that he would have wanted, but due to injuries, due to his turnover-worthy plays, stuff like that, I still think that an NFL team is going to like him, though, because of his physical traits and his natural talent coming out, one of the highest-rated recruits of all time. So I have the Browns trading up for him and maybe making him their quarterback of the future without a ton of risk as you take him at the very end of round 2. So that is going to do it for my 2-round 2025 NFL mock draft. A lot of these guys, this is going to change a ton. People are going to go way up and down, but very fun to look at as the college season has now wrapped up, at least the regular season. Let me know what your biggest team needs are. Are you fully focused on draft season like me at this point as a Bengals fan, or is your team doing a lot better than mine? Let me know in the comments down below. So if you like this kind of content, player rankings, mock drafts, scouting reports, all that good stuff, please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss anything coming up. Please like the video while you're down there. Both those things truly do help the channel so much. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one.